Every 4 years in Ghana, something pretty wild happens. The country gets absolutely flooded with these huge, expensive political campaigns. But here's the thing. In a country that's dealing with some serious economic challenges, a big question just hangs in the air. Where's all that money coming from? So let's dive into this fascinating puzzle.
And yeah, that's really the core paradox here. You see, during the 2024 election season, while a lot of Ghanaians were struggling with high inflation and the rising cost of, well, everything, the political world was just bursting with cash. It feels like two different realities, and it just doesn't add up.
All right, so let's dig into this paradox a little deeper. To really get the scale of the problem, you have to imagine what people on the ground were seeing every single day. I mean, you just couldn't get away from it. Everywhere you looked, giant billboards, you turn on the TV, you turn on the radio, political ads. It really seemed like the parties, especially the one in power, had this bottomless pit of money to grab voters' attention. Okay, but here's where things start to get, well, really confusing. When you actually start looking at the hard numbers behind these campaigns, the picture gets even weirder. So let's break down the costs versus what people officially make. So let's start with this number. According to a 2021 study, this is what it costs for just one candidate to run for a member of parliament seat, 4 million Ghanaian cedis. That is a staggering amount of money. Now hold that number in your head and compare it to this one. This is the official annual salary for a member of parliament. And remember, that's before taxes and other fees. One MP even pointed out that after all the deductions, their actual take-home pay is a lot less. And when you put those two numbers side by side, wow, the problem just becomes crystal clear. The cost to run for office is more than 10 times the annual salary. Just think about that for a second. You could work for over a decade as an MP and you still wouldn't have paid off the bill for your campaign. It's not possible through official channels. And that leads us to the big, obvious question, right? If the math just doesn't work with their official income, there have to be other sources of funding. And that is where things start to get pretty murky. Now, you'd probably think, hey, shouldn't there be laws to prevent this kind of thing? And, well, there are. The problem isn't the law itself, but the fact that nobody seems to be enforcing it. This right here is the key piece of legislation, the Political Parties Act. It was designed for one specific reason, to create transparency. The law is super clear. Every single year, parties have to report to the Electoral Commission where their money came from and how they spend it. Simple. So, how well is that working out? Well, here's the thing. Even though that law has been on the books for over 20 years, not a single political party in Ghana complies with it. Zero. The whole system that's supposed to provide oversight is in reality being completely ignored. So why isn't the Electoral Commission cracking down? Well, this quote from a former director of elections, it really gets to the heart of it. He says the commission just doesn't have the power or the political will behind it to force the parties to comply. It's basically a watchdog with no teeth. Okay, so let's recap. The official salaries don't even come close, and the laws for transparency are totally ignored. That means we have to start looking for the unofficial sources. This is where we start to see where all this shadowy money really comes from. And according to experts, it flows through a few key channels. You've got wealthy business people acting as financiers. The party that's currently in power can use state resources to help its campaign. And then you have these so-called gifts from contractors, and even straight-up vote buying. All of it happening in the shadows. And that's where the real danger lies. This isn't just about winning an election. It's about what happens after. When private financiers bankroll a campaign, they often expect a return on their investment. And that return? It frequently comes in the form of fat government contracts. It's a system known as cronyism. And look, this isn't just a theory. Let me give you a real-world example to show how this can play out. Back in 2012, a contractor gave the sitting president a luxury SUV worth about $100,000. Then, just 2 years later, that very same contractor got a major government contract. Now, the president denied any wrongdoing, of course, but the timing alone, it raises some serious questions about the link between these gifts and state business. And listen, it's not just people inside Ghana who are noticing this. International observers have been flagging these exact same problems for years. This quote from the EU's chief observer confirms it.
Misusing state resources and unregulated money are persistent issues that really undermine the fairness of the whole process. So, with a problem that's this deeply rooted, you have to wonder, is there any way to fix it? Let's take a look at some of the potential solutions that are on the table. Experts really point to two major steps here. First, the Electoral Commission needs some real power, the tools and the actual authority to enforce the Political Parties Act. Give the watchdog some teeth. And second, the law itself needs an update to include actual penalties. If parties don't face any consequences for ignoring the law, why would they ever follow it? And why is all of this so important? Well, at the end of the day, it all boils down to one word: trust. When the money is secret and the spending is over the top, it just eats away at public faith in politicians and, really, the entire democratic system. Shining a light on it all is the first step to rebuilding that trust. Which brings us to the final and maybe the most critical question of all. The clock is definitely ticking. As more and more Ghanaians see this disconnect, the pressure for reform is only going to get stronger. The real challenge is whether Ghana's political system can clean up its act before the people lose faith for good.